the whole, and we're gonna cover this in our lockdowns, but the whole George Floyd incident and the rioting and looting that's been taking place, you know, the country's out of control. And to me, this is exactly what this is what our government wants. This is what our politicians kind of want. They want this chaos. You know, I actually tweeted it yesterday that Donald Trump, this is what Trump wants. He wants to bring things back to make America great again, back to the 60s and the 50s, the civil rights riots.
I think he wants to go back to the 20s and 30s, and the KKK was ascendant. What I will say is that I think that with all the chaos, with all the fear, with all the looting, rioting, and burning buildings, it's like one big Trump campaign ad. And this is exactly what Nixon thrived on, is that, you know, he basically was able to scare enough white people in the suburbs that, you know, that chaos is going to be at your doorstep if you vote progressive. And that's how Nixon basically used the Southern strategy to basically, and this is, you know, what's going on right now, unfortunately, is going to make the most racist president we've ever had possibly end up getting reelected if it kind of continues on the path that it's on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes the people look bad, and totally takes the onus that our politicians are instigating and propagating this type of violence. And on top of that, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, which is affecting these cities that are rioting and looting more than
this is
white America.
This is a perfect storm. This is like several storm fronts coming together to make like Superstorm Sandy. There's several fronts coming together, storm energies coming together, and there's like a synergy because you have
still a hurricane. Superstorm Sandy was still a hurricane. We'll talk about that in another one, about how insurance companies changed the title so they wouldn't have to pay out. I digress. I'm sorry.
But just that this is basically a situation where you had you know, the warmth of the ocean water that creates the storm was really like the income inequality that was kind of papered over. It was never dealt. It kind of came to a head in 2008, 2009. It never was dealt with during the years of Obama in a real in a way that was really kind of would cure it. And then you had like the Trump's economy really wasn't so great either. It was just he talked about how great it was. So you had this income inequality, this income insecurity. And then you basically have the pandemic. You have people who've been locked up inside their, you know, they've been locked down, you know, in their houses. There's all this pent up energy, and all of a sudden you have in quick succession, you know, 3 or 4 incidents where police killed people who shouldn't have been killed. You know, one was a retired cop. You had, you know, and this is just on top of all the other cases. And I think that it was just. It was like a spark that just landed in dry grass. And
right.
all it was going to do was basically, on a windy day, all it was going to do is start a big fire.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and then on top of all this, Trump denounces the World Health Organization, is going to stop being funding that and being part of that. You know, and taking tips from them. I mean, the whole thing is a culminating ball of crap, and he's just piling it on, and just gonna lay it out and blame it on everybody else. We're gonna blame the disease on China.
Well, you couldn't have a worse
rioting on the black people. We're gonna blame you know, our racism on you know, Obama. We're gonna blame, you know, detentions that are still taking place at the border. We're gonna it's one big
he's always taken out of the playbook of Hitler, that he's always basically found the group to demonize, to basically blame his problems on, you know,
throughout his whole career, throughout his entire career, he's done this. And this is what you know, I've had discussions with my family and his people, and you know, you said it yourself, with people, you know, that this is who he is, and he's just taking his personality and throwing it into his policy.
I think, but rather than focusing on Trump, because he's just sort of like, almost, he's really, believe it or not, more of just a symptom. The fact that he got elected.
I think right now he's the pebble in the pond. He's the pebble in the pond. He drops it in, creates the ripples, and what we're experiencing now is a major ripple effect from at least the last 3 years. I mean, he's just piling on to the crap, but you know what? We've got a big Jenga tower of shit, and he's deliberately pulling out the unstable pieces. And that's exactly what's going on right now. This country is going to collapse, I feel, if we don't do something drastic. And we'll talk about that in our
you were
lockdown.
mentioning, I think just kind of staying to the course of our discussion, you were talking about the systemic factors. And I think that part of the issue is that, you know, I just know from my own personal experience, I used to work out at a gym called Max's Iron Den. It's a great place. And a lot of people that worked out there were police officers and people who were kind of like in that circle. And it's unfortunate, but some of the mindset you hear is this sort of this mentality that, you know, and I guess I could see when you're dealing with people at their worst in an urban environment, I guess you develop a certain outlook. But even then, I feel like, you know, that the overt racism that existed within these groups, you know what I mean, was just beyond worrisome. And it's kind of like, you know, listen, it can't be where, you know, you have to screen for this. You have to basically if you're going to pay, and officers of the law make a lot more money than I do as a teacher. I don't think a lot of them do. A lot of them make like double what I make, especially with overtime.
But at the same time, you know, the bullets aren't flying past your head on a day-to-day.
You know, as a special ed teacher in an alternative setting, all right, I could tell you plenty of times where I've on a daily basis, I would deal with fights and kids with weapons. So, you know, I'm not saying I'm at as much risk, but I'm going in there usually without, at my small school, without backup and without a weapon at my side or mace or any sort of armory. You know, I had no club or anything. So I would beg to differ on that on some issues. So if you talk to teachers who work in Newark and the worst neighborhoods.
Listen, we were in Patterson together, and
you know how violent and let me tell you, the kids. Patterson Catholic was good compared.
The kids rioted. Do you remember that? The kids rioted during school. Do you remember?
Oh, when they smashed the trophy case that time, or whatever.
Before I quit, yeah. Before I left school, I was like, you know what? This is we don't have enough leadership to get these kids to you know, be respectful of a place that takes very good care of them. Then I can't be part of that.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of like that microcosm. I don't condone the looting and the rioting, and I think actually the looting and rioting it's not the protesters by and large. By and large, overwhelmingly, the protesters are peaceful. There are people who come into these situations and see an opportunity to destroy stuff.
Sure.
You know, and make their statement in destruction. But I don't think the people who really want change, all right, understand that the rioting, looting is only, first of all, hurting the people in those neighborhoods, right. That are minorities. And also, too, it's making the movement, it's discrediting it.
Well, I was watching on State of the Union this morning, which I usually don't catch on Sundays, but I tried to get him this morning. And Jake Tapper was interviewing Robert O'Brien, the new national security advisor. And his whole thing is they have the rhetoric all built in, man. They're blaming this on Antifa and leftist wing anarchist groups that are doing all the looting and the violence. And I just, you know, when questioned about, well, what about the right wing stuff? What about the, you know, and Marco Rubio said something about foreign countries getting involved in this. You know, it's just a smoke and mirror show, man.
Well, let me bring up something important here. A couple of things. Number one, Antifa means anti-fascist.
Right.
So you're against people like Mussolini and Hitler.
Right.
All right. So what's wrong with being anti-fascist? I'm not pro-violence, but what's wrong? And a lot of Antifa, and there's very little evidence that there was any sort of Antifa present whatsoever.
Right, and that's the thing.
But let me jump in just on the issue of the white supremacist. What is documented, and there's actually there was a St. Paul there's a St. Paul police officer who was identified by his ex-wife, who was going around in disguise with a black umbrella and a gas mask on, who was smashing windows of the AutoZone, and the protesters called him out and videotaped him. And it turns out, when you look at the image of his eyes, his ex-wife identified not just his face, and you could clearly see with his eyes and his brow, is very distinctive. You can also, she identified some of the materials that he was holding as things that were property she was familiar with, meaning that she clearly identified this guy. So there are white supremacists who are deliberately fomenting looting and burning. All right, exactly. Because it discredits the protest.
Right, and it's promoted by our lawmakers. It's promoted and enforced by Trump and his cabinet and Bill Barr and all these. And then
it aligns with their narrative.
Right, exactly. So I think it's time that we get into our lockdowns. So
just real quick, before we get into the lockdown, one thing you brought up about foreign intervention, there is heavy evidence that the Russian trolls, that Putin's psychological operations, this is part of their game plan, is to have us destroy ourselves from within. And the same way they divided and conquered and used divisions within our country to divide us up before the Trump election so he could win, they're also using those divisions so that we'll basically weaken ourselves and destroy ourselves. They're playing upon our weaknesses internally, and there's heavy evidence. They were the whole state succession, like California and Texas seceding from the Union. That whole movement, all that division, when Bernie Sanders had Black Lives Matter people come up and attack him, all right, that was all fomented by Russian trolls.
Sure, absolutely. And you know, what better puppet to have in there than someone who is naturally breeds chaos. You know, says one thing, does the other.
And as a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, you know, I do. Absolutely. So, all right. So, why don't you get in?
Why don't you do your lockdown? Because why don't you lock it down?
You want me to lock it down first?
This is your yeah.
All right. So I wanted to talk about the just everything that's been going on in the last week, in the last actually couple of weeks, as far as racism and how we view the Black community and the brown community and the people who are responsible for creating this chaos that's happening right now. Now, I'm not going to take sides with the right or the left, because they're both equally as guilty. You know, if you go back 6-7 years, under the Obama administration, we had more. There were more police brutality reports that were televised that we know of under the Obama than has been under Trump. Now, does that make it right? No, absolutely not. But I'm not saying one way or another. It's the underlying racism that's been pervasive in our law enforcement system, in our society as a whole. Okay, so what's been going on with the police has been going on for a long time. That's why Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee and stand down for America, because you know I actually had a discussion with family members who thought that his actions were atrocious and were ridiculous, and you don't do that. That's a different, you can protest in other ways. And my comment to him was, what's he doing? He's taking a knee during the national anthem. He's hurting nobody. He's just making a statement saying, I can't support a country that doesn't support me and my people, especially since this country was built off the backs of Black people when they were enslaved. The fact, the White House was built by Black people during slavery. So this idea that this racism is really happening now and is ridiculous. It's always been, and the police violence has been occurring more and more often. And you look at Bloomberg when he was running for president, he was trying to defend his stop and frisk. It's another part of the problem, right? It's like, hey, listen, if they're Black, frisk them. If they're brown, frisk them. If they're white,
there's two sets of rules. There's two sets of rules.
Yeah, there's two sets of rules. Absolutely. So I want to go back. So this has been going on for longer, forever really, but the brutality and the cavalier attitude of some politicians towards black and brown people is being overlooked because of their position. Now I don't like him, but I'm gonna go Joe Biden. We discussed it last time about his comments on the Breakfast Club morning show, where he just, first of all, I watched the entire interview. If you watch the entire interview, he just comes off as a privileged, angry old man. He was barking at Charlemagne the God the entire time, barking his answers. I done this and I've done this, and if you vote for Trump, then you ain't black. Now you throw that out there as an old white guy who's lived through the civil rights movement, who's lived through all this stuff, and who's also voted for higher incarceration rates. You got a lot of balls to say something like that, especially if you're going to run for president, because basically you're no different than the overtly racist jerk that's in the White House now. Your racism is slightly hidden. I mean, you're the guy who has like a black friend and says, "Oh, I love black people. I got a black friend," and so just having that cavalier attitude where you think it's okay for me to say stuff like that because I got black friends and I've voted black, for black folk here and there. That is an underlying problem with politicians, white people, and I would also go as far to say that's an underlying problem with the police. Their training. We need to retrain. We need to find a better way of their justice system.
If I could jump
and our police system.
If I could jump in on the police training, I have friends a friend of mine who's from Newark. All right, he gets it. You know what I'm saying, he grew up in Newark. He's Spanish, he's Cuban, but he gets it. And I asked him what his training was like because I thought maybe they would have some sort of training that emphasized de-escalation and kind of like making situation better through not like. And it was actually more like the military. It was about oppression and suppression, not about de-escalation.
Exactly. And if you take a look at what's going on now with the riots, the police are out in full body armor and full, we call it riot gear. It's basically military style protection.
Well, it's in this circumstance, it's you have to.
Sure, for their safety, absolutely.
It's a borderline civil war.
But if you go into Penn Station, you go into just into New York at the train station, they're covered. They have M16s. They are fully armored in the train stations. I mean, people are commuting back and forth to work. Now, sure, things can happen, but we are already they're already creating a military state, with our police forces, and the fact that they are trained to shoot first, ask questions later is a problem, and that's true, and that goes all the way back to the Rodney King thing way back in the 90s. Their training started to change right before Rodney King, where it was shoot and then ask. And it's been going on. We see an unarmed black kid going to get freaking gummy bears in a hoodie. Oh, we got to stand our ground and go shoot him down like in a. Like
that was a private citizen, but it was
a private citizen, but that goes against the entire racism and how we perceive black and brown people. All right, so.
Are you ready to?
Minutes here. I got a couple more minutes here before I let you unlock it. Before I pick the lock. So I want to talk about the riots as well. So you texted me last night. I got rid of TV, so I'm not watching TV. I get all my stuff from YouTube, Twitter, CNN apps and all that stuff. CNN, by the way, is garbage as well. And we'll talk about that another time. There's a good thing, MSNBC, who I know you love, part of the several people on there, but they are responsible for blacking out Bernie Sanders and fortifying a moderate Democrat agenda because they're paid by the owners of the company are moderate Democrats who make millions off of having the correct.
MSNBC, NBC's owned by GE, and Microsoft, NBC, which is an entity of General Electric.
Right. So so the point is with the riots. Okay. Trevor Noah brought up a good point. just last night, he was broadcasting from his home, and he had mentioned that this isn't these riots should in no way be condoned as the right way to respond. But if you, like you said before, this is people have been locked in their homes. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's the income inequality. There's all this stuff that's brewing. Okay, so he mentioned that, you know, most of the people follow the rules. Most of the people are doing the right thing all the time, and that there is an agreement to living in a civilized society. And, you know, most people will follow the agreement. But he mentioned that when the people who are on the top don't follow the agreement that we adhere to as citizens, and they go above and beyond and they kill your people on a daily basis. So, I mean, this George Floyd thing, as terrible as it is, I mean, how many other black and brown people have been killed or brought close to death that we don't see on YouTube and Twitter, you know, that we don't see on the cameras or on the news. I mean, this stuff has been happening. This goes back to this whole stop and frisk idea, you know. So he brought up a point that, you know, when the people who are there to enforce society and keep things moving, keep the rule of law going in a peaceful manner, when they break that and they don't have your back, then you know, if they can't do it, why should we continue to do it? And I believe that's not justifying the looting, but gives a reason for understanding why that frustration is turned into violence. Now look, you know, when back in the 1990s, Michigan State won some sort of I think, I don't know, what do we win, basketball or football, Big Ten championship? It means absolutely nothing, right? But what do you do in times of excitement, in times of jubilation and extreme emotion? You destroy stuff. Humans are naturally just natural destroyers, you know. So when Philadelphia wins the Super Bowl,
there's like a mob mentality that takes
there
over.
is. Right, back in Detroit when the you know, the Pistons won something back in the 90s, you know, the city goes ablaze, cars are overturned, everyone's cheering, and it's fun and it's positive. There are just a bunch of knuckleheads who go beyond, but yeah. So is the looting good? No, it's not good, but you can understand the point that they're coming from. And I just want to say one more thing. He mentioned this, and I had been saying this the second Trump got into office, and with his, you know, pea grabbing. You know, we're teachers, right? And we're held to a certain standard. And, you know, we're held to a certain code where we have to teach people how to live a certain way. We have to behave a certain way. Most police officers have to behave a certain way based on their position. Most athletes have to behave a certain way. Coaches behave a certain way. You know, most politicians behave a certain way because we're all held to a high standard. And when you get some of these top officials not behaving that way, well, one, they lose complete credibility. And the thought is, well, if they can do it and they're supposed to act a certain way,
how do you
why
tell your
can't
students
I?
that not to be, you know, to not harass and bully and intimidate when your president does?
Right, exactly. And that's
How do you tell
so
your students not to act racist or sexist when your president does?
right, exactly. And that's our whole point. So this whole riot thing, it's I don't condone it. I don't think it's a good idea, but I understand it. I understand the angst and the of this terrible time that we're
Keep
going
in
through.
mind, again, I make the
I'm
point.
gonna let you pick it in a second. I'm gonna let you pick it
But
in a second.
I have to make this.
Just log
I
it
have to
down.
jump in because you had a lot of time
Well,
here.
well, that stuff, all that stuff keeps the divisions going. It doesn't matter if you're right-minded or left-minded. It's that division. We need to eliminate all of that. We need to understand that we are not brown, we're not black, we're not white, we're not yellow, we are not green or red or orange. We're all pink on the inside. We all bleed the same color. We're all made of the same stuff. And once we understand that we are one species and not different parts, you know, you don't not try and breed a Saint Bernard and a Chihuahua because they're two different dogs. They're a part of the same general species, you know. So it's possible to do that. And I'm going to lock it down with our problems are bigger than just this looting and this rioting. All right, I'm done. You feel free to pick.
All right. So, I mean, my locket, my lockdown, my lockdown. A
You
couple.
don't want to pick my lock?
I didn't get a chance to even lock it down.
Yeah, you pick my lock, and then I'll lock.
No, it's not. I'm not gonna. There are definitely systemic issues, and I think it's not even just a black and white issue. It's not even a race issue, because I think of the quote of Jay Gould, who was a kind of one of those robber barons from I guess, what was it? When was like the Rockefeller period?
Oh, the 20s.
Yeah, you get my point. But during the time of monopolies, right? And he always said that I could always hire half the poor to kill the other half. And the idea is that we have a system of that. There's a couple of things at hand here. We have an economy that's based on inequality, that's based on debt, that's based on basically that you can't afford your basic needs, so therefore you have to go into debt, which is Wall Street. Wall Street's most profitable financial instrument is debt. That's what they sell the pension funds, where a person who's in debt, credit card debt, student debt, car debt, housing debt, healthcare debt, you name it, that money is that inequality. It's black and white, and that debt is basically highly profitable. It guarantees income. It's fixed income that they can bundle up and sell the pension funds. So that's kind of like the underlying system we have of inequality. And what you're seeing as far as what's going on with the police, police can basically function as either the protectors of human rights or the oppression. And that depends on who's leading them. All right. That's from a top down, that the mindset, who gets hired and what their job description is. Are they there to suppress or to basically protect people's rights? Right. And I also thought one of the things I thought about when watching all this is that the parallels between our healthcare system and our legal system. You're not going to get justice unless you're wealthy. You're not going to get good healthcare unless you're fortunate enough to be rich enough to have either a really good healthcare program at your job, through your employment, or the monies to pay for your healthcare.
Which is another conversation.
So, but just to let me finish here. That well, why did this officer feel like he could basically do a lynching like this? Well, probably because he knew that what type of legal representation would Floyd have? Why do people resist arrest when they're being arrested? Because they know once they're pulled into the system, their chances of getting decent legal representation within our system depends on their being wealthy. And if you're poor, you're going to be probably forced to take a plea deal because it's the only way it's the only option you could afford. And another thing I personally thought about is that I feel like a lot of our issues are, I am locking it down. So,
Okay.
so
I didn't want to
my lockdown, all right, is that I feel that a lot of our issues, they are systemic, but I also feel too that it's not just that our country is becoming economically stratified, but it's becoming racially stratified. And the more you interact with people who are different from you, the less likely you are to view them in these kind of cartoons you've been sold by your president, by your media. All right. I feel like the more we have the community, and when I say community, I mean everyone, whether you're an individual who's a different religion, sexual orientation, whatever, or if you're a law enforcement, you should be from the community so you know them. All right. You're not coming in from the suburbs to go police an area that's urban and you don't know anyone. You should have a relationship with your community so that you know the people. You have an investment, you know what I'm saying? And you don't view them as someone to control. They're your neighbors. You're someone to help.
Yeah, that's what they do in Union City. Our kids are the cops are in the school, and the kids know the cops.
Exactly, and it helps. That makes a big difference, because a lot of times there are a lot of situations like this. Floyd got killed over a counterfeit $20 bill. In the bigger picture of things, he got killed. That's why he was pulled out. All right, that allegedly he broke the law with the counterfeit bill. So look at what's happened from this situation. All right, we've lost a lot more than $20 over this whole circumstance. Was it worth it? And I think with community policing, sometimes you look at the bigger picture, that you let the little fish go. And again, let me finish my lockdown, please. The last thing I'm going to start with, the last thing I'm going to finish with here, is that there's definitely an element within policing that is basically, you know, like the Oath Keepers, is like alt-right. This is like that cop who had his knee on George Floyd's neck. He had a hat on, and social media showed a red hat, like a MAGA hat, but it said, "Make America White Again." So that's his mindset. How does this person have a job as a police officer when he's obviously mentally ill? Because racism is a mental illness, right? That's my question. And you can pick my lock, please.
Well, I'm not gonna pick your lock in a negative way. I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna add to that.
Keep
Guy's
it
name,
brief.
you know, we're gonna keep going. You had more locking it down time. Um,
Oh, I
but
have this on tape. Trump, I have this on tape, all right?
yeah, right. But no, Derek, the guy's name is Derek Chauvin, and I definitely don't want to give him any attention or credit.
I think his name needs to be said. I think he doesn't need it to be
Acknowledging his
hidden.
name, but it turns out. Well, but I think we need to focus more on George Floyd, because it's really the tragedy is about him, and because of this idiot. It's like Lee Harvey Oswald. You know, you don't want to keep saying the name over and over again, and you know, you know, kind of martyrize that person. I'm not doing that at all, but it turns out that he and George Floyd had worked together prior in a nightclub, and there must have been some already. This might have been personal. So
Like bad blood.
yeah.
Get out.
So
So the police officer who has knee on his neck knew him?
yeah, yeah. So
That's
it turned
insane.
right. So and also, and this is again, this I don't want to do this because I don't like her either. But this is Amy Klobuchar's state, right? We talked about this briefly the other day when you passed by. That he had already had several complaints against him for this type of stuff.
He had like
And
17, I think, issues.
yeah,
17 issues. You know, where there's smoke, there's fire.
right, and exactly. And what'd she do? She ignored it. And here's the person we want to make as our vice president. She's going to ignore this, and it's these people with all this power that just ignore certain things because
I think just on your point, I think that the relationship between prosecutors and the attorney general's office and the police, that this is why you need a federal bureaucracy that's basically outside of the state. That's like the FBI should have made like a bureau that specifically deals with police abuse, because it's too cozy. There's a relationship that's too cozy in law enforcement and prosecutors because they're always on the same side. And then it's kind of like you kind of look the other way because you
right.
don't want to get. I think this is Obama was trying, although it got shot down by the Republicans who controlled Congress, that Obama wanted to have it where there was oversight at the federal level anytime a person died at the hands of the police.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this the other day. Is that when you're in a position with dealing with criminals or crime or a situation where you have to enforce law, you have to make deals in order to get some of the things that you want. I mean, like I said, when I was a dean of students, I had kids coming in with minor little, he said this in class. Well, all right, I got to cut a deal. Look, stop doing this, and maybe we can see about doing that.
That gets into community policing, that a lot of these issues should never actually end up in the legal system because it's a waste of time. A lot of the laws that are being enforced are bullshit drug laws that shouldn't even be enforced in the first place.
Right.
Like Colorado's doing better than ever after it legalized weed.
Sure.
And think about how many kids are getting locked up for basically minor drug possession.
Well, how many? Let's correct that. How many black kids are getting
yes,
locked up,
yes.
Right? That's the truth. And again, this actually goes to the 13th Amendment and how we have to remove it or remove the amendment. What do?
Congress can basically, like, if you need a large, but you can modify. It could be modified if enough people vote.
Well, so yeah, the 13th legalizes slavery. That if you were incarcerated, you can be a slave to the person who's incarcerating you. If you owe money, or if you owe whatever, they can have you a slave. So
Well, well,
if you get arrested, you are a slave to the United
well.
States. And
This
that's
gets
part
to
of the
get to
problem.
the point that I think we have to change how we feel about. There are cases where there are truly sociopathic
Sure, sure.
people who are violent. Um, but what I will say is this: that by and large, that's not most of the people who enter prison. They may
Right.
become that. They may become mentally ill because of the environment they're in. But my view is that if you're going to put people into prison, you should be sending them in with a different mindset, not about making them more depraved, but actually helping them basically become better people, helping them
Right. The
cope with their
point,
problems.
yeah,
You
the
know,
point is rehabilitation. The point is to help them, not just
I'll get in.
remove.
I'll get into, like, again, from my own personal experience, and again, my own personal experience. We're going to go with this. And it's been used. I think it was in Ontario, where they used ayahuasca to treat PTSD with the police officers. Honestly, that nope. I think that ask researchers at Johns Hopkins that I think that one of the ways you could help police officers, people who are incarcerated because of violent acts, this sociopathic behavior, I think some people could be reached and cured. That
Sure.
this negative loop they're in. I think psychedelics could definitely be a powerful healing agent for some people. And
That's
its cure rate is, again, for addiction, because what it does, you no longer look at a person, you feel the connection. You
right.
feel your connection to other humans.
And
And
that's
that's part of the problem.
problem. That's the problem. We lost connection to our own species.
Exactly.
And that's it.
You
You know, I
do
was watching something. You know, I watch a lot of YouTube inspirational things, and one of the things they mentioned, they said, as humans, it's our nature to appreciate, the world, the natural beauty around us. And I thought, you know what? No, it's not. As humans, it's our ability to destroy the natural world around us and
try to
forget
control
that,
it.
and forget that we are part of it. We distinguish ourselves as human beings, that we're not animals. We are animals. We're one of the highest forms
But
of
we look at
animals.
ourselves as almost kind of separate from the rest of the universe. Like
Exactly.
we're supposed to change the direction of the river. One of the things I've kind of gotten into is Taoism, and the idea that you are
All is
don't
one.
trust, exactly, trust,
Yeah.
go flow, trust the universe. The universe is sending you someplace. Don't fight it. And
Right.
I think when you have your knee on someone's neck, you're not one with the universe.
No.
I think that when you basically maybe take the cuffs off, talk to the person, figure out really what went down. And the other thing is too, I'm going to make a point too, that we talk about the economic inequality I described before. Well, maybe if people were paid a living wage, maybe if there was enough economic opportunity, then people wouldn't have to sit there and have to use bogus $20 bills to get what they need.
Yeah, last week an article came out that Jeff Bezos is going to be the world's first trillionaire, and it's ridiculous. I'm not saying congratulations, Jeff, great job from going from your little closet with, like, your desk full of boxes and crap to having multi-millions. I get it, but there's no way that one person should have trillions of dollars while the majority of the people have nothing. And you hire them, you pay them garbage. I
Not
mean,
when your relationship is it's so one-sided.
right,
You know,
right. It just shouldn't be. If you like you said, if you go with the Taoist view and you have the flow with the natural energy of the world, if you have millions and you're giving away millions, if you have trillions and you're giving away billions, you're still going to have trillions. It's simple math. It
and
eventually comes back.
the flow
So
of the universe is basically energy doesn't go from the top down; it comes from the soil up.
but it's a cycle.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a,
but I'm
everything
saying it. But it
like,
flows from the soil up.
yeah, and you're right. That's it's our economic inequality, and the problem is the people that we keep putting in place in office. And again, I will say this over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you're Trump, it doesn't matter if you're Obama or Biden or Bush or Clinton. You're part of the same machine. You're just one other side of the same machine. We need to remove the machine and put a new one in place. And I know we disagree, but now is the time. This is, with all the stuff
Well,
we're doing. You said it's the perfect storm. And what happens after a storm? Growth and healing. That's what happens every time in nature. That's what happens after storms: growth and healing. And this is the time we need to let it all collapse and rebuild.
One of my I actually had this same discussion. I had mentioned that another fellow person, another tribe member I shared a ceremony with, that I said that, you know, everything in your life is a lesson, all right? And that not all the lessons that you're going to have are going to be pleasant.
Right.
You know, some of your most meaningful lessons are going to be painful, all right? Because they're going to teach you things that you didn't want to hear, see, or feel. And I think that maybe if we're smart, we'll learn from this lesson that we're going through now
And
about who we should be and how we should treat each other.
right, that's
So,
that absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's a great point to end on, because this is the moment that we do need to learn from, and in every aspect. This is really the culminating moment when it comes to wealth inequality, healthcare, even the climate change, race inequality. You know, this is all coming up at this moment right now. And if we can't learn from this, then we're Americans, hands down, because we tend to make the same stupid mistakes over and over and over again, and we just don't learn from them as a country. And this is the moment that we need to step up, like I said, rip that Band-Aid off, and let the wound start healing and start new. And
we
you
need
were
to, I
absolutely
think
right.
this is our chance to show some leadership. And Americans do the right thing after they tried everything else.
Yeah, right, that's true. That's a good point.
Craig, it's been real.
It's a great place to stop it. So it's always real. It's always real, Tony. Thank you. Thank you for locking it in with Craig and Tony.
Everyone, I hope you enjoyed it. Please become part of the discussion. And if I know it too, we need to make some maybe a Twitter account or some way that people can contact us. We'll put
Yeah, I'm gonna put that up.
we'll put that in the comment section, that if you want to reach us and be part of our show or comment and join the discussion, we please, by all means, reach out to us. We are willing to we're willing to have guests. So, all right, Craig.
All right, Tony.